Good evening, Peter.
Good morning, Rob.
That's right.
I was having a guess.
I made two videos yesterday, one at 4:44 in the afternoon and one at 6:44. So we're starting this one at 3:44 in the morning my time, but it's, 7:44 your time there in Australia.
Yeah, I prefer my time because I don't think I'd like to be awake at that time. Your time.
I've been awake for over an hour already.
Our early bird catches the interview.
Wow. So anyway, it's been a while since we've had a conversation on Skype to be shared with the world. And many people have looked forward to this and have asked where you were. And I know you've been doing some ceremonies with Jagamara and been involved in some other things as well. So catch us up, if you will.
Yeah, I've been involved in lots of things, actually. Doing a video series for YouTube with the young French gentleman called Roman on sacred vortex geometry and vortex maths, which is fascinating stuff for me because it's tying, for me, it's helping to tie the spiritual into the physical and redefining what maths should be, another tool to help define our reality and how it relates to the universe. And vortex maths are certainly very, very interesting type of maths that I can relate to. I could never relate to the maths in school. It was rote learning stuff, and I had to just, thump it into the old subconscious and hope that it came out at the right time. But it never really was a language that described reality for me. And Romans helped me to bridge that a little bit. Well, quite a lot, actually. Because I find once you start to begin to understand the principles of vortex maths and see that mathematics is not a linear construct of a one with a bunch of zeros after it, but it is a what do you call it? It goes in octaves or dimensions, or it's a multidimensional construct. That's the word I'm looking for. Then you see that maths can also be a really good descriptor of reality, and that perhaps we should switch the way we look at maths and maths, what science is based on, and the way we build and make and create things. So the way we shape this world is based on our maths. In the physical sense. So if we change our perception of that, then we may actually end up building a better world and translating the spiritual and the subtle into the physical in a more aligned way.
The Fibonacci code plays a part in that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. The Fibonacci sequence is definitely in that, and you can see that everywhere in nature. And this has been the fascinating thing about working with Roman, is that he's worked this vortex maths and these more modern concepts of quantum physics into sacred geometry drawings, so including the Fibonacci spiral. And so he's related it all and brought it all into a visual focus. And for the people that are interested, if you just YouTube Peter Van Runt on my channel, you'll find the Sacred Vortex Geometry series. There's 3 in there, and there's going to be 4 more very soon. Roman's, meanwhile, been on holidays to France over the silly season, and he's come up with some interesting things and sent me videos of free energy or over Unity energy machine that actually works, which has been quite interesting. So that's one thing that I've kept terribly busy with. The radio show has been another thing, and I haven't really spoken in public other than the radio show for probably since I did the last interview with you, really. And for me, I'm not a day-to-day warrior like you are with these videos. I find it amazing how you just keep going and going and going and find new subjects and new ideas. I need an inspiration to do something. I need to feel like I'm saying something new, saying something fresh, and I've also been really going through my own shifts, and it takes a while, I guess, when you're going through energetic shifts before you actually get ready to put that into words. It's not something that you describe 1, 2, 3. It's something that has to settle down for a while, and you kind of just go, "What was that?" And then you go, have to think about that for a while, and that's been going on a little bit as well. But I've been watching your videos lately. I mean, actually, really quite enjoying it. You've been having a really good run of videos, stirring up the pot with the vegan debate, and yesterday you're talking about sovereignty, which is very interesting. I find that a very interesting subject at the moment because there's so many people doing sovereignty training, and I've been looking into it a little bit, and having done Aboriginal ceremonies with Jagamara, which was a pleasure.
I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Yeah, it was a pleasure and an honour to be able to take part in that, and I suppose I'll put that in the filling in as well. It was very interesting to do that. I'm somebody who still, in a way, likes ritual. I used to be, a churchman a long time ago in the Liberal Catholic Church, and I swung a mean thoroughfare with incense in my day. And funny enough, there were a lot of parallels between what we did in the church and what we did in the ceremony. We're blindfolded and getting a spark, a twig off the sacred fire, and listening to the claps of the clapsticks moving back to light a fire within a dot painting, not a painting on canvas, but the way they do it originally, which they do a really big one on the ground. And that was a ceremonial dot painting. And so we were carrying the fire from the source, the fire of spirit, to light the flames in the dot painting, to make the connection, to connect the spiritual and the physical. Not that they're ever not connected, but I suppose to do that in consciousness, in awareness, is a good exercise.
The grounding of it on earth.
Yeah, exactly right. And funny enough, it did feel to me like when I was in the middle of it, like I was back in church. The parallels between the rituals really weren't lost on me. Because in the church you do the same thing. It's about the rising of the serpent fire, or the rising of the kundalini fire, or the rising of the spiritual fire. When you're out the back of the church lighting the fire, then you start moving into the church, and when you're in the middle of the church is where the crowd is, which is the heart center. And you're taking this fire from out the back in this thoroughfare, and you're blessing as you're going along. And then when you get to the sanctuary at the front where the altar is, in the ritual I did, it was more like the ancient Catholic ritual, nothing like the modern stuff they do, which is not much of a ritual. Somebody just stands there and blabs and hands out a piece of bread and some wine. But we had 7 candles, so all the minor centers in the head. So, and then, the thoroughfare travels from the spine of the body through the heart of the body to the head, and then everything in the head, the candles come on, and the connection from the divine to the physical is established, or from the physical to the divine. So there were a lot of parallels there going on for me, and I did really feel like I was in church again, and not in a bad way, in a good way. It doesn't matter what outer expression or what metaphor that you choose for your expression of your spirituality. If you're fully committed into it, your whole heart, mind, body and soul are committed into it, then whatever it is, as long as you don't impose it on anybody else, then it's a fine thing to do, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what it's about. But it certainly gave me an appreciation, and it also gave me a feeling that, we're not so different. We're not so different, and we're all growing up in our spirituality. And the Aboriginal people have lost a lot of their cultural heritage, and some of it's been preserved, but some of it is for them to re-establish, to reinvent. Somebody invented all those ceremonies somewhere along the line, and then some of it got lost, and now the Aboriginal people are reinventing themselves. And I met a lot of Aboriginal people there who are very, very welcoming, who welcomed me into my space. We're doing these ceremonies in the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, which is a right out the front of our old Parliament House. We have a new Parliament House in Canberra, which is a modern thing. It was built back in the, 70s or 80s or something. And we have the old one that was built when Canberra was established, because Canberra was actually established as built as the capital of Australia, because Sydney and Melbourne kept fighting, so they sort of went, well, let's plonk it in the middle somewhere. So Canberra was built from the ground up as a capital city, and the old Parliament House was built in, I don't know, back in the 20s somewhere or something like that. So you got this stark contrast of this sort of regal, colonial, big white building, and then you walk out into the field opposite where the Aboriginals at great pains have established a sovereign space that is now known as the Aboriginal Tent Embassy. So right opposite this big sort of colonial, regal building, you have this bunch of tents, and there's always a great big fire going in the middle there, and people camping out and in tents and little trailers and stuff like that. And it was a privilege to be welcomed on their land and respected, and that felt really good. Felt really good to connect in ever so many ways, and felt good that to connect with the Aboriginal people and to enter into a dialogue with them on their turf, on their land, where they felt safe and secure, and it brought the guard down. And I heard a lot of stories about people of the stolen generation who were taken away from their parents when they were younger, and when they were children, and cut off from their heritage. And somebody like Jagamara goes out, and these people have been cut off from their heritage, and they don't know their past, they don't know their rituals, their ceremonies, their legends, their stories. And it's fascinating to see Jagamara in the middle of a group of those people and reconnecting them to the ceremony, reconnecting them to the Aboriginal spirit, to the Aboriginal spirituality. It was a wonderful thing to see that, and there are so many other people who are now coming out and really, really, really active to help reconnect the Aboriginal people. So that was very, very interesting to witness. People who are so lost, struggling for an identity, and then getting something of a reconnection with that, and still, so wronged as they were by the whites, offering me this hospitality and opening up to me. That was a privilege, and that's something that it gets you right here. It does. That sort of a connection when there could be so much bitterness and hatred, and for them to drop that and open up and let me in, behind the curtain. That was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, that's how I felt in the 90s when I discovered the Native American Sweat Lodge, which actually has a European counterpart to it. But the first sweat lodge that I did was a Native American Lakota, whose first name actually was Ron, interestingly enough. And he didn't look. His skin was as Caucasian looking as I am, but he was a Lakota Sioux. That's all a mixed marrying, I guess, and everything. But it was an amazing ceremony, as you said. It reminded me of things in my Christian upbringing, just with a different way of doing it, but the same principle of reconnecting with life and with the earth and with spirit. It was an amazing experience for me. I didn't mean to cut you off. This is your
No, that's fine. No, that's obviously there's a lot of parallels between us, and that is a beautiful thing to go through. And the Native American culture is something that I'm very interested in as well, because there is a lot of wisdom amongst the original people that we've lost connection with, and I know that a lot of the American originals, North American originals, and the keepers of the wisdom are also opening their skins and they're carrying the bundles of wisdom for years and years and years in a closed fashion, passed on from one to the next chosen one. And I know they're opening up their bundles of wisdom, and so the Indigenous people all over the globe are becoming a stronger voice and a stronger presence, and they do have something to tell us that most of us have long forgotten. And that's an important connection. And one of the beautiful things that Jagamara and I talked about was the principle of adoption, mutual adoption. That the whiteys that come to Australia and taken over the place get adopted by the tribes into the tribes, and the tribes get adopted into the economic affluence system of the white people at the same time. So a mutual counter adoption where everybody in the world would become adopted by the native tribes, and sovereignty of the land would be given back to the native tribes. And so, the problem of the colonial hangover being solved by everybody becoming adopted by a tribe in their neighborhood. And then the idea of all tribes adopting all other tribes, so that you end up with a multi-bloodlined, because the bloodlines are very important to them, a multi-bloodline tribe all across the globe. And it was a wonderful idea to play around with, and in the way indicative too of a way forward. I think some of these ancient cultures also had elements that needed to be gotten rid of, and Jagamara talked about things like blood law, for instance. And I don't want to go into all the principles of that, but there were certain practices and laws that he felt also had to be broken up for their society to move forwards, and he just didn't like the way that the corporate colonial system went about it, and who can blame him? And we also drew parallels about all of us being stolen in a system where, your parents sign you away to the corporation with your birth certificate when you were born, and your birth certificate being monetized, and you traded as a commodity on a derivatives market, basically, and so you're sold into slavery and bondage, and your natural being declared dead, and then a corporate fiction strawman identity being superimposed on you. So there are parallels. It's not just red people or black people, or all people have been enslaved by this system. And that brings me to something I want to touch on too, that you touched on yesterday in the videos, which is the whole question of sovereignty and how people are going about establishing this sovereignty. I find that part of what Jagamara is doing, I find that very interesting, because which is more the Franco Collins, Eucadia type stuff. And I find it very interesting from a point of view that you actually, by looking at how that process works, understand how people have been enslaved in this system, and how some people have, by their knowledge, which they really didn't make available to other people, have set up a system within that system whereby they can be overlords to other people. So the sovereign is in that definition an overlord, a king or a queen. And I find the educational aspect of it, you touched on that as well, the educational aspect of it is really, really interesting, and it's a good exercise.
It is important.
Yes, it is important to understand how you've been hoodwinked, otherwise how you're going to get yourself free. But the other side of it, when I look at the Acadia site in Eucadia site, some of the things don't gel with me. First of all is that, their definition of everything is done under canon or ecclesiastical law. All these steps are undertaken under canon or ecclesiastical law. Now, when I go to the Eucadia site, they have a definition of canon law, which just plain and simply says divine law. Oh, that sounds good, canon law. I'm doing this under divine law, under God's law. But, grab any dictionary, grab any legal dictionary, Wikipedia it, Google it, Webster it. Canon law means laws pertaining to the government of a church. And ecclesiastical law means the rules pertaining to the internal workings of a church. So if you go to that extent that you do all that paperwork and you follow it all the way through, for me, it's like a recontracting with the Vatican. It's just claiming a different status. I'm claiming a status of sovereign under the Vatican now rather than a status of slave. But for me, it's tinkering within the same old system. And, we're both followers of the OPPT and what Swissino is doing. And what's happened for me, what I see out of the OPPT filings is that Heather foreclosed all that stuff and returned everything to Prime. Everything by the filings was returned to Prime. And therefore, everybody is now free and sovereign under that UCC ruling. So why do I go back to the old Vatican system, the ecclesiastical, the canonical system, to go through steps to get sovereignty, to get equality to the Queen of England or the Royal House of the Dutch or something like that, who've done these steps to get their equality under the Vatican rule, still under the Vatican rule. So there's still something there between you and God that says, well, I'm the source of the law on this planet. I represent God on this planet, and you're a lucky one who knows how to, or who is chosen to become sovereign under this law, but you're still under that law. And that to me doesn't gel, because that was all foreclosed by Heather's filings, and it was reset to Prime, and because everything was reset to Prime, we're all free. And
well, that's what I was saying in the video that's airing today. I mean, the only requirement for our sovereignty or for human rights is to be born human. I mean, there truthfully can be no other requirement.
That's exactly right. And when you go deeper into that, there's a few things that don't gel with me. So at the end of this sovereignty process, you're going to be an apostolic mendicant minister plenipotentiary, apparently. And
I heard Jagamara say that when I interviewed him.
But the Eucadian definition, the Eucadiocide definition, is very, very different from other definitions. Again, and if you break the sentence apart, apostolic pertaining to being of the apostles or of the Pope as their representative, so as the representative of God on earth. So apostolic pertaining to the Pope. A mendicant is a member of the clergy who has no stipend or no income, like a begging monk. A minister can be someone who works within the framework of law or within the framework of religion. And plenipotentiary means that you have the authorization of the boss to negotiate on behalf of the boss. So for me, it says that you're,
the hierarchical thing.
You're a beggar under the Pope who is allowed to go out and make decisions and negotiate. So how does that connote freedom? I belong to the Pope under his law, canon law, ecclesiastical law. I'm apostolic mendicant, an apostolic begging monk. It doesn't gel to me. It doesn't speak freedom or new system or new covenant. Whereas what Heather has done, foreclosed all the old system and then allowed for the lawful setting up of CVAX systems where all is equal, everybody is equal, everything is prepaid, pre-authorized, pre-approved, and common law prevails, which is not a law that's imposed from the top down, but it's a law amongst peers, so a law amongst sovereigns. And from a spiritual aspect, to even need to describe what freedom or sovereignty is doesn't gel with me either. When I go quiet and this entity, this Peter, this conglomerate of experiences, memories, stories, when that goes quiet and I'm not that, then I know myself as something else, and that's not a self. I do have to say myself because I can't describe it any other way. But I do know myself as, and that's probably what Heather called eternal essence. And to me, I'm a pantheist, as you know. I believe that God is everything, and is not just in everything, but it is everything. And God immanent to me is an essence that pervades through everything, and that gels more with what I remember from being silent when I come back from being silent, come back into this little me. And so from that perspective, I'm everything. I've created everything. So because I am in everything, and I am everything itself, really, there is no inequality. There can be no inequality. And so in that state, if you want to call it a me in that state, I have to kind of personalize it to speak it, really. When I'm in that state, then, I can't say that I am free, because there is no I. There is just freedom. This freedom that's creating, that's expressing, that's becoming universe, that's becoming, planets, stars, people, beings, plants, everything, So I'm expressing, and I'm freedom itself, because that's what I'm doing. I'm being free. I'm expressing myself in this creation of a universe. So it's not freedom that, is seen as something that can be handed to you or something that can be taken away from you. It can't really even be defined, because how can you define the whole universe in a sentence or a book it's freedom. In that same token, in that level of awareness, there is no I love you, because there is no me and you, because there's me in everything. So then there is just love. So in that state of being, there is just freedom. There is just love, And somewhere in that journey from this little me to that all-pervasive essence is a middle point, where that all-pervasive essence also all of a sudden seeks to create a singularity, an individuality. And, you can call that the soul, or you can call that the higher mind. And, it's in that level of awareness where both that omnipresent essence and that single individual can be held in focus at the same time. And that's the most beautiful place to be. And I'd be a liar if I say I was always there. But either end of the extreme of that pole is not what we're looking for. It's being aware of both and. We always come back to both and. There's never a conversation I have with you where we don't say the words both and. And so from that perspective, for me, freedom is not something that can be granted or taken away. Freedom is something that I am. Intrinsically, I am. It's not even the founding fathers in the American Constitution had the right idea. It's an inalienable right, but it goes further than that for me. It's not even a right, because a right is something that's handed to you or taken away, or you have a right. That is something that's like external to you, that's given to you. No, you are the basis of that right. You are that right. That right to freedom is you, and it can't be taken away. It can't be granted either by anyone, because that state of freedom is the state of the Creator, and that's what we all are. And so for me to go and put it all down on paper, I think that's how they got us in the first place. They put it down on paper and said, well, jolly, you're a free being. Let me define that for you. I'll put that on a piece of paper and here, sign it. And then this sort of incrementalism that a friend of mine was talking about the other night creeps in, and then it gets redefined, and then it gets challenged in the court, and it gets a little bit rewritten here, and little by little by little by little by little, this definition
slavery
gets...
system exerts itself again.
Exactly. It gets redefined and redefined and redefined and whittled down until the only freedom that you have is the freedom to blindly serve the state as a slave, or the corporate state as a slave in this case. And so I don't like putting anything bar the most simplest things down about myself on paper, because, you give them too much wiggle room and they'll turn it into something else. And that's what's happened to us, people have fought for freedom. Magna Carta was signed, which said you're sovereign under God, and constitutions were built up by nations, and constitutions have been usurped, and so we have to be really, really careful if we want to build something new, that we don't go making the same mistakes again, and certainly not doing the same things under the same old Vatican constitution. So for me, that's not the road. And if we go into a new system as CVAX, okay, maybe we can learn elements of that, because elements of that sovereignty are very, very important, that you act with integrity, that you are
committed to the common good.
Committed to the common good, that you're your own registry. That's a really, really interesting thing too. You know, I don't have to register my car with a motor registry and pay for it because I register it myself. I don't have to get registered for a driving license because I issue my own travelling permit, travel authority. So I don't have to get that passport either. So you don't have to get that corporate identity, because as soon as you become registered in some manifest, you're just owned again. So that's what all the right bits of sovereign behaviour and what sovereigns do. They have their manor roll, they put all their stuff in it, they certify their own births, deaths, marriages, the whole lot. So those are the sort of things that certainly can come into a new system under a CVAC system. And there are elements of that that are useful to consider for a new way of going forward. But a new way of going forward has to be a new way of going forward. It can be built on the foundations of the old, but it cannot be rooted in the old. It cannot be. You can't put new wine in old bottles, as it's somewhere in the Bible, I think.
I've heard that one.
Yeah. Well, you can't put new wine in old bottles, but you do grow the grapes in the same old soil. So there are foundations of the old that we need to take and build the new upon. But we can't try and rebuild the old. And so this whole thing of, relying on a piece of paper to say that I'm sovereign, if you haven't had the experience of yourself as being free, as being freedom itself, how can you describe it in the first place? And if you've got it on a piece of paper, but you haven't got it in your heart, what are you going to do? Oh, please, sir, here's a piece of paper. Please make me free, sir. You're not going to act. You're not going to know, and that's what it's about to me. It's about the knowing every day that, I go within myself and I experience a little of that omnipresence every day, and quite often on off, and in the middle too. And it's that knowing that matters. It's that knowing that matters, a couple of years ago, I woke up and I had a mantra, almost like a mantra in my head, and it said, I'm a free and sovereign human being. I'm a single consciousness that is love. And that just went on for, 2 months in my head, and it completely changed the way that I looked at myself. And it just happened. It was spontaneous. I didn't make it up. It just came, and it just resonated, and it resonated, and it resonated. And it wasn't a period that I was undergoing immense growth and getting more deeper insights, and it really accelerated myself. And for me, that couple of months was where I stated as an individual to the universe that I am freedom. I'm a free and sovereign human being. I'm a single consciousness that is love, and that for me cemented it more than any piece of paper will ever cement it. So you can't go relying on pieces of paper. This is how they tricked us in the first place. Let's just define it on a piece of paper, and then we can change the wording, and we can grab the piece of paper. Or we can
ignore whatever you put on the pieces of paper.
Well, this is the other thing.
That's my experience in the system, if you will.
Yeah,
where does what you do?
Yep. Exactly right. Where is your enforcement? If I go to the bank with a check and I say, well, here's the check, and they go, yes, thank you very much, and I go home, I log on, and there's not a cent in my account, and I go back to the bank, I say, well, I put in a perfectly good check, it didn't bounce, where's the balance in my account? And they just say, well, sorry, we don't think that check's valid. We don't want to, there must have been a slight misspelling on the check or something like that. Give me an excuse. So what do I do then? I go to a financial banking ombudsman, or I take the bank to court, and in some way, shape or form, I'm going to try and get enforcement on the fact that they're holding my value, some of my value, and I need to get it back. There's mechanisms for enforcement. Unfortunately, we're doing this paperwork. There are no mechanisms for enforcement. The idea that because you're sovereign like the Queen and somebody wrongs you, the Queen will actually come running to your aid. Unfortunately, they've got a bad history of screwing each other over in the first place. And believe you me, you know, if you get pulled over by the policeman, you get fined. The Queen ain't going to come running to your rescue. There's no enforcement for it. And neither is there for the OPPT stuff, unless what Swiss Indo is doing is true and is happening, which, you know, fingers crossed. Then there will be some enforcement. But it comes down to not to what the rules are. They don't play by their own rules. They'll shift the goalposts as many times as they like. And if you don't have enforcement, then sooner or later they're just, you know, they're just
tyranny.
Yep, it's tyranny, and that's where they're heading, and it's freedom versus.
That's where they want to head. I hope they don't get there.
No, I
any
certainly
further than they've already gotten.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they've gotten far enough, I tell you that much. There's a lot happening in this world, and that's sometimes the downside of reading, doing the news like we do on Double Dutch Radio, is is you get to hear a lot about it when you start looking at all the daily news and getting all the real news that the mainstream media aren't giving you. But yeah, good processes, understanding sovereignty, understanding what sovereigns are, how they work within the system. But the best process for freedom for me is to still yourself, to drop the mind into the heart and still itself, and experience yourself as that origin, and experience yourself as that middle point that knows both sides of the coin, and bring that love out into action. Bring that passion that comes within you out into action. And that's how little by little we're changing the world. And I hope that we've reached that tipping point now where a larger event can take place.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are hinting at that. A lot of things are happening in the background. And that's what we work on, Ron. It's what you work on. Yeah, it's what Aristo works on with you, is what we're all working on, is just raising that consciousness to that tipping point level, and then I believe it has been reached, and then letting that play out in time. And so if we keep working, if we keep moving, if we keep growing, then it's just a matter of time. Because I never say it's just a matter of time, because don't sit on your backside and just let the time go by and hope that it'll be all okay. We're God's eyes, we're God's ears, and we're God's hands. If you're a pantheist like me and God's an essence that's in everything, then God can do nothing unless you lift your hand, by the sweat of your brow, by the imagination that you have, by the love in your heart, by the thoughts in your head, the thoughts that your head resonates with, because I don't think thinking is a local phenomenon once again. That's how we get there, and we're doing that little by little, day by day, bit by bit, and this tipping point is working itself out in time, and I'm beginning to see that the first bit of daylight is hitting the East Coast, as we say in Australia. It hits the East Coast, and that's having spent some days with Jagamara, which means morning star. So the people around the world that are doing this are the morning star people. They're the people that connect the first dot of daylight with the larger land. And so sometimes, yes, it seems like it's getting a little bit darker, but there's a lot more resistance in the powers that were to us now, rather than the other way around. And there is a lot more effort that they're making, because they're really, really, really beginning to feel the pinch. They're feeling like they're losing control. And
they are.
Yeah, and they are. And to me, it's never really been about good and evil. There's that which we're not afraid of, and that which we are afraid of. And we call that evil. But in that evil, that which we're afraid of, that darkness, there lies a great creative potential. And we've grown up enough. We're not the baby that needs to sleep with the nightlight on anymore. We can turn the nightlight off now, and we can sleep in the night, and dream in the night, and create in the night, create in the darkness, create in the subconscious. and it's not evil anymore. So there's only ever been that which we've been afraid of and that which we've not been afraid of. And there's only ever been that struggle that came out of that fear, which is the struggle between freedom and control. You know, because that's what the fascist superstate is. It's a state of ultimate control. It's a state of where our own fear that we have, which makes us need to try and control our environment, the people around us, the relationships, has become so strong collectively that we've manifested collectively this cabal, this government that is become so overprotective that it's become restrictive, and then, of course, because it is restrictive, now they can restrict your freedom and your wealth. They can take advantage of it. So it's protection gone nuts. It's ego. It's it's personality versus ego again. For me, personality is good because I need to talk to you, and that's how God, quote unquote, enjoys himself, by experiencing relationship. Wow, experiencing separation is great because I can experience relationship, and for that I need a personality, and a personality is the great thing. But when it becomes divorced from that middle point and that back essence, and becomes entrenched in fear and protection mechanisms, then it becomes a mechanism of control, and that's internal fascism that we impose upon ourselves, and it's external fascism in terms of collectively we manifest that into these governments and corporations. So there's only ever the battle within yourself between what you're afraid of and what you're not afraid of, and if you give that fear away, then there is unity in that. You can play with the polarities. You can go into the dark and enjoy yourself, and you can go into the light and enjoy yourself. And nobody inhabits your dark and uses your creative power against you anymore, which is what the Cabal has always done. They've chased us out with fear, chased us out of our dark side, which is our creative energy, because, before there is a spot of light in the universe, there's the dark fueling it. All the dark fuels all the light, and the subconscious creates, and the conscious enjoys that creation. So we've always been made afraid of our own power. Now we're stepping into our own power, that God and the devil, good and evil stuff, it can just be understood as that which we're afraid of and that which we're not afraid of. We've dissolved that fear, and therefore now, because we're doing that collectively more, we're now manifesting the breaking of this cabal, the ending of this dark oppression and this fascist superstate, because we're not afraid of our own power anymore. And of course, understanding sovereignty makes you accept your own liability and your own power. And certainly going into a new system like a CVAC system, you need that. And the fact that the idea of the CVAC has come and the idea of sovereignty has come to humanity again means that we're collectively now accepting both sides of the equation within ourselves, and which means that the balance will shift from control to freedom. Because freedom, again, and this is probably a good note to end it on, freedom is not what can be granted or taken away. Freedom is what you are. Seek it within yourself. And that's all that it's about. So control versus freedom, well, seek it within yourself, and we're finding it within ourselves, and therefore we will dissolve this control mechanism and we will set up something that is entirely new, not rooted in the old. A new covenant, a new heaven, a new earth. And that's what you work for, that's what I work for, that what millions of people are waking up for and working up to. And let's just keep going, because they are struggling, and freedom is overcoming control.
Thank you, Peter. Beautiful note to end on. Overcoming control. Much. I will talk to you again soon, I hope. And
absolutely.
Thank you very much. You have a beautiful evening, and I hope to have a good day, and till next time. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, John. Wrong. Namaste.